life we're living today is the result of 100 years' influence, subtle manipulations, lies, and hidden agendas that have been thrown at us from certain societies, organisations, and we're here to tell you about one or two of those today. We're actually at Bernard Shaw's house, and most of you know Bernard Shaw because he was a playwright with plays such as St. Joan. But there's another side of Bernard Shaw that a lot of you don't know, and that's his membership of the Fabian Society. And we're here to tell you a little about that side of his life and who the Fabian Society represents. I just want to read you a little quote here. This from the British Catholic Family News. It's a news service of the National Association of Catholic Families. And this article appeared in the American Catholic Weekly, The Wanderer, December 11th, 2008. And it is with permission of the author. Writing in 1992 in Fidelio magazine, the Frankfurt School in Political Correctness, Michael Minicino observed how the heirs of Marcuse and Adorno now completely dominate the universities, teaching their own students to replace reason with politically correct ritual exercises. There are very few theoretical books on arts, letters, or language published today in the United States or Europe which do not openly acknowledge their most negative, destructive criticism possible of every sphere of life which would be designed to destabilize society and bring down what they saw as the oppressive order. Their policies, they hoped, would spread like a virus, continuing the work of the Western Marxist by other means, as one of their members noted. To further the advance of their quiet cultural revolution, but giving us no idea about their plans for the future, the school recommended, above other things, 1. The creation of racism offences. 2. The continual change to create confusion. 3. The teaching of sex and homosexuality to children. 4. The undermining of schools and teachers' authority. 5. Huge immigration to destroy identity. 6. The promotion of excessive drinking. 7. Emptying the churches. 8. An unreliable legal system with bias against victims of crime. 9. Dependency on the state or state benefits. 10. Control and dumbing down of media. 11. Encouraging the breakdown of the family. One of the main ideas of the Frankfurt School was to exploit Freud's idea of pansexualism, the search for pleasure, the exploitation of the differences between the sexes, the overthrowing of traditional relationships between men and women. To further their aims, they said they would attack the authority of the father, deny the specific roles of father and mother, and wrest away from families their rights to as primary educators of their children. Abolish differences in the education of boys and girls. Abolish all forms of male dominance, hence the presence of women in the armed forces. Declare women to be an oppressed class and men as oppressors. Munzenberg summed up the Frankfurt School's long-term operation thus: "We will make the West so corrupt that it stinks." And I'm sure that you can recognize a lot of that agenda going on right now, today, in present times. We've got Robert Theobald today. He's going to tell us about the history of the Fabians and join the dots for you. And Robert, would you like to tell everybody out there who's watching this and connect the dots for them and tell them how this all links in?
Yeah, I'll try to do that, Fern. You started off talking about the Frankfurt School of Communists. Well, we can link that. We can make a link there to George Bernard Shaw pretty much straight away. This is a quote from the Dublin Evening Herald, 3rd of February 1948, and Shaw says, "I am a communist, but not a member of the Communist Party. Stalin is a first-rate Fabian. I am one of the founders of Fabianism, and as such, very friendly to Russia." So you've got a link there straight away. But of course, the Fabians were, I shouldn't say were more subtle, I should say are subtle. They were and they are. Although they supported communism, lots of the Fabians actually disapproved of what was going on in Russia. But Sidney Webb and George Bernard Shaw, who started the Fabian Society, they went over to Russia in about 1934 on a visit. I think they both met Stalin, actually. George Bernard Shaw, Sidney Webb. Then when he gets back to England, he's ostensibly the writer of a book which was called, I think it's called Soviet Communism: The New Civilization, more than 1,000 pages. But anyway, in about 1950 something, a Soviet KGB colonel, I think his name was Bogolepov, Colonel Bogolepov, or something like that. He actually spilled the beans. I think it was a congressional hearing in the United States. He spilled the beans, and he told everybody that that book was actually written by him in the Soviet Foreign Office. So that will show you the degree of cooperation between the Fabians and the Soviet Union, at least the Soviet Union in Stalin's time. But you need to know a little bit about this Fabian society, because it was started around 1884, and it's got communism associated with it right from the very beginning. For example, Karl Marx's daughter, Eleanor Marx, she was one of the first group. Engels is associated as well. I've got a little book here. I've got a little booklet here, which was put out from Australia. There's a quote from Karl Marx here. Actually, I'll just find it because it's he's talking about about communism, and it's quite a shocking quote, really.
While Robert's looking for his quote, and believe me, there's masses in this book, I can see from here. I just wanted to make a comment, really, but the only thing I ever knew about Fabianism was watching the BBC drama Upstairs, Downstairs. Brilliant production. And in one of those episodes, the daughter of the house actually joined the Fabians. And you can see from that production, and they're usually very, very well researched with the BBC, that the primary motive of the people at that time, it was like the latest thing to do. And it was upper middle class, the rich, suddenly finding a conscience there, and they were going out and becoming aware of the terrible conditions that the poor and the of the city were living in, and trying to distribute the wealth to help. So you can see that Fabianism had good ground there, and with that motivation, it soon got a really, really good following. But like with many cults and societies, there's always the outer layer of the ordinary man on the street that is doing good. He's there because he believes it's doing good. But there's always an inner circle in these groups and organisations that have that ulterior motive. Anyway, back over to Robert.
Thanks, Vern. Yeah, there's a quote here from actually from Karl Marx himself in Murracut's book. This is the book Options. Fabians have carefully told us that Marx was under no illusion about his Das Kapital being rubbish, stuffed with statistics to pad it out. Just before it was published, he wrote a letter to his friend Engels, dated 2nd of April 1858, in which he stated quite frankly, the whole Scheisse, which means shit in German, because he was a German, as you know, the whole Scheisse is to be divided into 6 books: 1 capital, 2 landed property, 3 wage labour, 4 state, 5 international trade, and 6 world market. So that's a quote from, and that's quite interesting there, because you've got, when he says the world market, of course we've got this globalisation now, which of course is pure Marxism actually. But to get back to the origin of Fabian society, it's the 2 biggest figures in it are George Bernard Shaw, we're at his house here today, and Sidney Webb. And George Bernard Shaw was an Irish man. He was a playwright, he was an author, he was originally, earlier on, he was a journalist. He was a perfect front man for the Fabian Society. He was a public figure. The ladies loved him especially, and very rich ladies and blue stocking type of ladies thought he was marvellous. He was a good front man. Sidney Webb was the other one of the double act. Now, he was a sort of a little insignificant little fellow with a squeaky voice, and he was the kind of engineer behind it. He was the one that understood legal matters, and he understood the way the civil service worked, and he understood the way the British government worked. So he could supply that technical side of it, you see. The next question is, because how did they actually put all this into operation, and what did they actually do? Because they're so such a little bit known about them, and yet they've had such an enormous effect. How did they do it? Well, first of all they decided that, let's go back to the name, the Fabian Society, for a start. The Fabian Society is named after Fabius Cunctator, who was a Roman general. Cunctator means delayer in Latin, and he was the Roman general that was sent out from Rome to hold back Hannibal, to keep Hannibal back from the city of Rome. Now Hannibal had a very, very powerful army. Carthage was a very powerful state, and Hannibal was going for Rome. Fabius was the one that was sent out to try and hold him back, and he did it in a very unconventional way for the times. He used delaying tactics. He used what would today be called terrorism. He used all sorts of tactics like that. He basically letting the enemy make the mistakes, and he was terribly criticised by his own men and by the people in the city, by the Roman people in general. But he actually delivered what he set out to do, which was to let Rome have enough time to assemble a sufficient army to do battle with Hannibal and to overcome him. You see, and after that, of course, the Romans gave him a great deal of acknowledgement, and they were very thankful to him. And then he became dictator at a certain point. But he was that's where they get the name from, you see. Because at that time, in 1884, not many people, certainly not the common people, would have any knowledge of the classics. So they wouldn't really understand where that name comes from. In the early days, they're basically pushing socialism. This is what they're out to do. Some people say, what's the difference between socialism and communism? Well, there isn't really very much, actually, but in fact, the USSR, the name of the USSR, Soviet Union, it was the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. It wasn't the Union of Communist Republics. It was the Socialist Soviet Republics.
Yeah, that's right.
They wanted to push communism. Shaw and Sidney Webber and the Fabians, they wanted to do it in a different way. They wanted to do it in a gradual way. They wanted to use gradualism, the same way that Fabius had used it. They knew that they couldn't achieve what they wanted straight away. So they thought, well, the only way we can do it is to do it on a very, very slow way, and we'll use influence. We'll use our subtle influence. They knew how to write articles and so on. But incidentally, in the first few years of the Fabian Society, it's recorded that they were giving 700 public lectures a year.
Wow.
Now that's an awful lot of public lectures, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, and they would be giving those to trade unions and well, really anybody that would listen.
Yeah.
You see, so that was how that's how they got the thing going.
Yeah.
Now, what actually the thing is, what actually motivated them? That's the interesting question. What motivated these guys to do it? You see, and well, not only guys, because there was ladies as well. There was Eleanor Marx, who was the daughter of Karl Marx.
Mm-hmm.
Incidentally, two of his other daughters committed suicide, the daughters of Marx. So they were obviously very unhappy.
Yes.
Anyway, there's other women. There was Emmeline Pankhurst, the famous suffragette.
Really?
She was in it. Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah. Annie Besant.
Yeah.
Annie Besant is the Theosophist.
Yeah.
Which is basically occult. Is an occult belief.
Yeah.
It's
They had a lot of teachings from the East, didn't they?
Yeah.
From India and whatever.
Yeah, Annie Besant, she's
Religions from there.
famous. Yeah, Annie Besant she actually promoted this man called Krishnamurti.
Yeah.
To be the new Messiah, you see, but that kind of fell through. But this is the occult side of it.
Yes, yeah.
These are the early ones. But then they realised that to make their progress, they had to work with the trade unions, which they did.
Does that link them in with the Labour Party?
Well, yeah, they're very close to the Labour Party, but I wouldn't say they were close to the rank and file of the ordinary working man, the ordinary rank and file of the Labour Party. I wouldn't say that at all.
But do we have them in government now? The Labour members in government?
Oh yeah, blimey!
So that's how they get their influence today.
We've got 200 members of Parliament who are members of the Fabian Society.
Wow!
And it's been like that pretty much down the line. I think in the time of the Attlee government, which was the government that came in after the war.
Yes.
That when Churchill was kicked out in 1945, Attlee government came in.
Yes.
There were more than 200 Fabians in that Parliament as well.
Right. So modern day Fabians. I've seen a picture of Tony Blair against the Fabian logo, the famous window.
It's the Fabian window. It was designed by George Bernard Shaw, and it's actually got George Bernard Shaw himself and Sidney Webb, the co-founder of the Fabian Society, and they're hammering at a world which is on an anvil to change it. They've got a group of men and a group of women on the window, which are Fabian men and Fabian women. They're dressed up in 16th century clothes, by the way. I don't know why they did that, but they were. A fascinating part of the Fabian window is the shield, which is above the world, which is on the anvil. The shield shows you the Fabian wolf. It's the Fabian wolf in sheep's clothing. It's a black wolf, and he's got a white sheepskin on him.
Yeah.
You see, so that will show you how crafty they were, and they were actually having a joke with people. Shaw was when he commissioned that.
Oh, Shaw commissioned them.
Oh yeah, he commissioned that.
Yes,
Yeah.
Yes,
they've got other symbols as well, actually. There's one here, which is you can see it. This is on the Fabian regional and government thing, and it's nearly all these Fabian publications have got the Fabian tortoise.
Hold it up.
And what does it say on the tortoise, Fern?
When I strike hard.
And
that's on the logo.
Yeah, and if you go to New York, you can actually go to, there's a part of New York called Turtle Bay.
Oh,
which is where there was a Fabian colony around there. So in the park there's a little column, and it's got the Fabian tortoise on it.
Fabian society is not just in this country, then it's in America as well.
No, it's all over.
It's all over.
Yeah, I mean the Fabians, the Fabian who went out from England to more or less proselytise America for the Fabian cause was Graham Wallis.
Yes.
And he would have been the one that would have been in touch with people like John Dewey, the educationalist who basically changed the whole American education system. To change it over to socialism.
If this sounds a little bit sweeping for the viewers, but we recently put out a DVD of a gentleman called Norman Dodd, and he was the chief investigator of the Reece Committee, and that was set up pre-80s. He died in the 80s, so it goes way, way back there. And he was investigating the tax-exempt foundations of America. And that really does involve us here. It's not an American thing only. It's more like charitable trust, we'd call them here, wouldn't we?
Well, yes, great. It's interesting you should say that, Fern, because the big Norman Dodd talks about the Ford Foundation.
Yeah.
He talks about the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. What's the other one he talks about?
Rockefeller
the
Foundation.
Rockefeller,
yeah,
the Rockefeller.
And it was the Carnegie Endowment for Peace, wasn't it, that actually admitted to him that their agenda was to mould melt America into Soviet Russia, wasn't it?
Well, yeah. Who was it? Rowan Gaither, wasn't it? Rowan Gaither, I think.
That's right,
Rowan
yes,
Gaither said that we're under presidential special order to so render America similar to Russia that America and Russia can be comfortably merged. I mean, it sounds absolutely bonkers, but it's true.
It's true.
Yeah.
He admitted it, and also we know that these foundations, especially the Carnegie Foundation, is funding education over here, and they're the ones that are putting a lot of the socialist and Marxist literature in the schools. You can see it now to this day. The Bournemouth, Southampton universities both have funding from the Carnegie Endowment Foundation in America. Rockefeller is concentrating on the American education, and Carnegie does the international. I mean, look it up, you'll find it. But R. Coones, C-O-O-N-E-S, and look for Norman Dodd on Google Video and watch it for yourself. It's going to join a lot of dots for you, and it goes way... These are the people that are funding and pushing this from behind, aren't they?
Well, yeah, it's fascinating you should say that, Fern, because if you go to the London School of Economics, they call it was expanding very fast 100 years ago or thereabouts. In fact, they used to call it the empire on which the concrete never sets, and so the London School of Economics was actually funded partly by Rockefeller.
Right. So
you get that. Yes. But you're talking about the Carnegie Endowment. But that's just to tell you a little bit about present day situation. One of the trustees of the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace is actually Lord Carr of Kinlochard. Now, he's just been to the Bilderberger meeting in Greece. He's a trustee of. He's a Rhodes trustee. He's a Carnegie Endowment for International Peace trustee, and he's also a Fulbright trustee. But we're not talking about him at the moment.
Yes, because the Rhodes scholars tie up again with something else. This is a huge big web we've got here, isn't it?
Yeah, we're talking about the Fabians.
Yes, so we go back to the Fabians, so we'll be here all night.
Yeah, talking about George Bernard. Let's go back to George Bernard Shaw first.
Yes.
In this book, The Brotherhood of Darkness, which is by Dr. Stanley Monteith, is an American gentleman. Now, in that book, he's got an important quotation from George Bernard Shaw. It's on page 48 of Brotherhood of Darkness. And Shaw says here, I also made it quite clear that socialism means equality of income or nothing, and that under socialism you would not be allowed to be poor. You would be forcibly fed, clothed, lodged, taught and employed, whether you liked it or not. If it were discovered that you had not character and industry enough to be worth all this trouble, you might possibly be executed in a kindly manner. But whilst you were permitted to live, you would have to live well. As far as I know, I was the first socialist writer to whom it occurred to state this explicitly as a necessary postulate of permanent civilization. That is that comes from his book, An Intelligent Woman's Guide to Socialism and Capitalism. It's what it is. It's Fabianism is elitism, and you can track it back to Plato. Plato thought that things were best managed by a benevolent dictator who knew best how you should live your life and what you should do.
That ties up a little bit with, as I was reading out before we started talking here, to further the advance of their quiet cultural revolution, by giving us no ideas about their plans for the future, the school recommends, among other things, and one of those was dependency on the state or state benefits.
Yeah.
And as you were just reading out there,
absolutely,
it's completely total.
Well, if you come, actually, where we are at the moment, we're at St Lawrence, which is in Hertfordshire. About 5 miles over there is Welwyn Garden City, but that is based on Fabian philosophy. There's also another one as well. Actually, the first garden city was Letchworth, which is up that way, about a dozen miles. Mm-hmm. And Letchworth actually has what they call a settlement settlement in inverted commas. A settlement, that's a Fabian precept, and the first settlement was actually Toynbee Hall in East London. That's where these well-heeled Fabians would go and do their charity work. You see, at the Toynbee Hall.
Because, in upstairs, downstairs.
Because it actually comes from the philosophy of Ruskin.
Yes.
Because Ruskin said, he was a professor at Oxford, and he said that the only way that we can maintain the British Empire, which he considered to be the most superb empire that's ever existed in the world. He said the only way that we can actually maintain English civilization is to spread it to the lower classes.
Yes.
You see, so and that way we can maintain our empire. Oh, that is part of the strand of where it's coming from. You know.
Yes. I think when they say empire, they mean more like national identity roots, don't they, rather than the colonial empire?
I think that's changed a bit, actually. If you talk about empire, I'm sure people like Bernard Shaw and Sidney Webb were very, very conscious of power and the power that this country had, but they didn't necessarily look at it in a conventional way of nationalism as you or I might look at it. Their idea was a bit more subtle than that. In fact, the Fabians were directly involved in dismantling the British Empire.
Oh,
they were the ones that started it all off. Yes. They even had one of their Fabian front organisations, the Fabian Colonial Bureau, that was involved in it all. And you could say, well, why would they want to do a thing like that? Well, they regarded the empire as it stood as an obstacle to the spread of communism.
I see.
So it had to be knocked down. And then you get people like Nkrumah in Ghana, and I think Kenyatta from Kenya, and lots of different people from the empire came to England to be educated in Fabian ways, you see.
Oh, I see.
And they were very much involved in that. They basically knocked the empire down. They wanted to do it, and they did it.
Yes.
You see.
That ties up a little bit. I've just been thinking here, and a friend of mine went to a Fabian meeting, and she was absolutely appalled because the speaker there was speaking out against nationalities, and she was speaking out against private properties, that sort of thing. Now, doesn't that tie in with, if we wander off a little bit here, but it doesn't really wander off because it's all under the same umbrella, as it were, sustainable development.
Well, sustainable development is a way of, that's a very, very nice sounding thing, actually. It sounds lovely. It's a thing that everyone aspires to in there, I suppose. But in actual fact, sustainable development, the political concept of sustainable development, is a very, very evolved thing, and it is in essence the promotion of world communism. That's what it's about. Even the Soviet Union had the promotion of sustainable development in their Soviet constitution, because if you think about it, if you want to spread your Soviet, your communist power across frontiers, what better way of doing it than via the environment? You say, well, of course, my factory here is producing some smoke, and it blows over onto over the border onto your country. Obviously, we've all got to get together to solve these problems. It's a very clever way of promoting communism, and I think it's in Dr. Stan Monteith's Sustainable Development syllabus, which I haven't actually got here, but you can get it off his website on www.radioliberty.com. He tells you, he's got you a quotation there from, I think his name is Karl Blois, who was the Moscow correspondent for the the Daily World or something. It's in America. It was in a United States paper for communists. Anyway, Karl Blois was his name, and it's Bloice, and he was an associate of Gorbachev. He said the environmental movement promises to bring more people into our orbit than the peace movement ever did. So they're using it to promote socialism, world government. You see, obviously everyone that's sensible wants to preserve their environment. Of course we do, but we don't have to have communism to do it. We can do it in a more intelligent and better way than that.
It's one of the tools that they're using then. Obviously global warming, the controversial global warming, is a way of getting us to accept it.
Well, you can tie straight back to the Fabians now, because I told you that they've always promoted the things they want to do via their front organisations.
Yes.
There's been lots of them. Maybe we'll talk about one or two more. But the one I'm thinking of at the moment is an outfit called Local Works. And Local Works is associated with Charter 88, which is a Fabian organisation. And what Local Works has done, and they are doing, is to promote the Sustainable Communities Bill in the United Kingdom.
Yes.
They've actually succeeded in promoting it in England, not in Wales or Scotland or Northern Ireland, but in England at the moment. And they're working on getting it in the other parts of our kingdom. What that is, that Sustainable Communities Bill, it's very, very cleverly packaged, in my opinion.
I went into the website and I looked at it, and it seemed amazingly good that you would giving the local people a say in all their local affairs and get back. Listen to this: get back our post offices, sort out all the transport, probably may even open the train lines again. Get us all the industry in the local villages, whatever. It sounded absolute paradise.
Well, I think that's how they sell it, Fern.
Yes.
Because take the post office, for example. Now, Lord Mandelson, I'm sure that he wouldn't be very much in agreement with that. He wants to sell our post office off to TNT, which is part of the Dutch post office.
Yeah.
So
they seem to be working against themselves. They're not, are they?
No, they're not. But the fascinating thing is they sell it really, really well. I had a gentleman come to visit me the other day who's a representative for a company that I deal with, and he announced to me that he was a member of CAMRA, which is that's CAMRA. You know what that is, don't you? That's the Campaign for Real Ale, which for people in America and in other countries, it's quite active here, obviously, because there's lots of people that like drinking beer, and they like it. They like it to be nice, good quality, and not too adulterated and sort of full of chemicals and so forth. So that it's quite an active organisation, you see. So, but they've actually this Local Works, which promotes sustainable development, Sustainable Communities Bill, has roped in CAMRA, you see, because CAMRA feels very attracted to this idea of local control and promotion of local business and all this, growing local food. So they've been attracted into it. And I tell you who else has been attracted into it? The Countryside Alliance. Now, I can't think of anybody more conservative than farmers.
Right.
Well, conservative with a small c.
Yes.
And yet they've been roped into this now. And I don't think the ordinary members, if they knew what it was about, would be that enthusiastic, to be honest with you.
What is the actual agenda then of the Sustainable Communities Act?
Well,
Where are they actually going with this?
Where are they going? But if you look down the list of things that they want to do, they actually want to promote sustainable development, which is the United Nations Agenda 21. That comes right down the list. That comes right near the bottom of the list. After all this stuff about keeping your local post office open,
which the government is doing the exact opposite, aren't they?
So it comes right down the bottom of the list, you see.
Yes.
And they're if you go into, for example, freedomadvocates.org in California, they've done a lot of work on exposing to people what the Sustainable Development United Nations Agenda 21 Sustainable Development really is, and it's a communist thing. So it ties back. So the Fabians are still promoting communism, but now they're doing it in a very modern way. They're doing it via sustainable development. the way it works on this Sustainable Communities Bill is that in the local community you have to write into your council, and then the council has to take notice of your letter. If you request them to implement the terms of the Act, the council has to do it. And it has to be put into operation. And it says it really is something with teeth, and I think it probably is. But I'm very sceptical about it.
Because this Agenda 21 is being implemented now, isn't it? It's the taking away of private property, taking the wildlands in America away from the people and sort of driving the people off the land.
Yeah.
That sort of thing, yeah.
It's to do with, well, it's in two bits actually. In it's the Wildlands project, which obviously is very much to the fore in America because they've got so much wild land anyway.
Yeah.
We haven't got much here. But the other half of it is urban smart growth.
Yeah, yeah.
Now they've got that in America, and so have we. If you look at any new development, they'll never tell you this, but that will be built to conform with the requirements of Agenda 21.
Yeah. We'll have to put a link on this too. We did a little video about this last year, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It's a good one if you want to go in depth in this. It's a very hard subject to tackle in a short space of time.
You can't do it in an hour, but you see, this Bernard Shaw, where we're in his garden now, he understood very, very well understood that the way that you do all the way that you promote communism, the way that you take people's freedom away from them, is slow and incremental. And of course, this Sustainable Communities Bill is a perfect example of that. It's gradually creeping up on people.
Yes, yeah.
I mean, and it's the same. It's the incrementalism. If you suddenly arrived in a country and said, "Well, that's it, folks. We're taking everything away, all your freedom away. You can't do this and you can't do that. That's the end of all that." Of course, there'd be an outcry, but they don't do that.